Donnie Van Stavern of Riot. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm in beautiful Chicago, getting ready to play Reggie's.
Yeah, I mentioned Riot, but the nature of this interview is a little bit different. We're going to be talking about your other band, San Antonio Slayer, right?
I have another band.
That's right. It was recently announced that San Antonio Slayer will be reuniting for some live appearances. How long did it take you to make it happen, and how did it come about?
Well, it came about where, the vibe has always been there for underground metal, Texas metal. There's been a lot of bands that come out of there. And believe it or not, at some of the Riot meet and greets, as well as Dave McClain, the drummer, told me at Machine Head, Sacred Reich, meet and greets, people would bring Prepare to Die and Go for the Throat. So it always, like, there was some interest there, cult kind of interest for the band. And as you know, we've been together quite some time, and there was another band from LA called Slayer.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that.
So we ended up, having a lot of history for the band. And but we just had a lot of people, festivals were contacting us about possibly doing a reunion. And this was like a while back. We even recorded a version of Prepare to Die with the guy that is singing for the late great Steve Cooper, now Jason McMaster. So there is a new version of it. But the timing was right. Sacred Reich wasn't playing, and Riot was open on those dates, or we're headlining the festival in Germany, and Slayer's playing before us. So I'll do double duty. But there was just a lot of interest, and the timing was right.
Only a few months ago, when I interviewed you for the new Riot album, you already were wearing that Slayer versus Slayer t-shirt, so there were a lot of hints already being put out there.
That might have been just a little bit of a hint, and I wear that a lot. It's a bit of nostalgia. That show was legendary. It's like I said, it's when we both found out there was a Texas and a LA Slayer, so we were like, they want to say it's versus. It was never really a versus thing. At the time, the show was, where I was already joining Riot and stuff. So it was kind of a nostalgic thing, and I got the shirt. And if you notice, Tom Araya on the very last Slayer show in San Antonio, when they did their last tour, he wore it on stage in San Antonio. I thought that was kind of good because a lot of history. But that show was at the Via Fontana, no longer exists in San Antonio, Texas, and it was a memorable event. It's the first time we met Slayer, and they were great guys, and we got along. So, everybody just parted ways.
So, who will be in the Reform band?
The Reform Slayer will be the original lineup, and a lot of people were wondering about that. They were like, well, and that's another thing. When me and Dave McClain talked about it, a lot of bands will get back together and they'll be missing members. I said, no, if we're going to do this right, we're going to do the people that are on Prepare to Die and Go for the Throat. So obviously, Steve Cooper, the singer, passed away many years ago. And so the rest of us are alive. And who else could we get to sing but another heavy metal Texas legend, Jason McMaster from the Watchtower and Dangerous Toys. So we do have Ronnie Jarzombeck on guitar. He was on Go for the Throat. His brother Bobby Jarzombeck used to be in Riot. And Dave McClain, Jason, Bob Catlin, who was in the band, and me. So it's original. And one show we're including 3 guys, because on Prepare to Die was Art Villarreal. On the second record was Ronnie Jarzombeck. In Germany, Art can't make it, so it'll be the original Go for the Throat lineup. And in the Texas show at Hell's Heroes, we'll have all 3 there. See, I set off an alarm.
I know, right? It's a Slayer effect. Great choice when it comes to the singer. When Jason told me he's going to be doing the vocals, I was thinking, how in the world is he going to handle it? So I actually went back to listen to San Antonio Slayer albums. And before you know it, I kind of realized he's going to handle it at ease because it's the same school of singing.
Yeah. He's, I've known Jason. We both grew up teenagers doing the underground metal thing when Metallica was starting and all those bands. We were friends with James and Lars like when we were kids. We saw them when they were open for Raven. So me and Jason go way back. We were roommates, and he was doing Watchtower, the original Watchtower. We were doing Slayer, and then you had bands like Hellstar and Militia and all these bands in the Texas scene. So, we've been friends forever. And then we said, well, we can search out for a singer that sings like that, or we have them right in our backyard. Jason McMaster, he's our friend. He's a part of that metal thing in the very beginning, so it was a no-brainer, and he'll do the songs justice.
Have you had a chance to rehearse yet?
No, we have, like I said, we recorded when we first talked about it. We all sent in files from where we live, and we did a recording of Prepare to Die with Jason singing, and it came out pretty good. We thought we would release it, but maybe next year when the dates start to happen. But rehearsals will start a month, 2 weeks to a month before the shows in Texas, because we all live in Texas except Dave McMaster. He used to live in Alameda with Machine Head, and then when he joined Sacred Reich now, he's back in Wisconsin. So he'll come to Wisconsin. Me, Art, Bob, we live in Texas and in San Antonio, and Jason will come down from Austin. So a couple weeks before the shows, we're rehearsing.
What plans do you have for this Reformation? What should we expect?
Well, what we're going to do is, it's a different day and age. We were kids back then in our teens. Now that we're older, and we're all from touring bands, it was, kind of crazy that all of us from back in the scene went on to join, bigger bands, So basically we're using that mentality that we have to put into the new Slayer show. So we'll come back with we're going to play all of Prepare to Die. We're going to play almost every song on Go for the Throat, I think except 2. And then we're talking about, like we did back in the day, playing old, like we did an old Angel Witch song or an old, something just to spice it up like we did when we were kids. And we're probably going to have stuff we never did, like the big Slayer banners and scrims, and we'll dress up, and we try to bring back the
feel,
the 80s.
Yeah. Let's talk history. So when did Slayer initially form?
Well, Slayer formed way back in the day. We were it was like in the early 80s when we, believe it or not, me and Dave McMaster were in another band from San Antonio, and we met up with Bob and Art, and we formed Slayer, and we had a different singer. And then we, eventually got Steve Cooper. But it was like the early 80s, when Prepare to Die came out. We played a show, and a guy saw us, and he had a record label, indie record label with big distribution. So he signed us, and we put that out. And then we started, we were able to go play, and we had a decent record out. So that's kind of like what we got in the early 80s, and and we kept on and did Go for the Throat and so forth. There's a train.
Who are your influences, and who did you want to be at the time?
Well, back then we had a lot of people that were a lot of bands that we were influenced by, and that's why we would play those. We loved the old Merciful Fate. We love the old Iron Maiden with Paul Di'Anno, the first 2 records, and Merciful Fate and Angel Witch. That's why we would play those songs. We were influenced by the new wave of British heavy metal. That was one of our main things. So that's kind of where we got our roots from. That's where we felt like we wanted to do our music, a little power metal, with some riffs and, heaviness, and with that high voice like Halford.
Once you came into a style of your own, how would you describe the music?
Well, I thought we did. We created a style because, like you said, we had all these influences. But I think there were certain things that we created outside of like the Merciful Fate, King Diamond kind of vibe and stuff like that. We did a little bit more. I think it was more power metal than they tend to do, upbeat power metal. And then we did a little more off-time stuff, especially when Ronnie joined. We started doing different signatures and stuff like that. So I think we changed it up a little bit. We were still aggressive, but we had a style with some interesting breaks and riffs.
What was the local San Antonio scene like at that time?
It was great back then. It's changed, it's hardly there anymore. San Antonio, there's a couple original bands. Now everybody's, of course, doing the tribute thing. There's a million tributes to this band, that band, this band. But back then, we had radio. We had a DJ down there on a FM or real station that would play metal, and he would support the local talent. So the scene was great. We would play the Slayer versus Slayer. It wasn't held in a little club. It was held in a theater, balcony sold out. The scene was there. The people were there. It's dropped since, and now it's not really, like that so much anymore. There's a little metal scene, but back then it was flowing. We did shows with Hellstar, Watchtower, Militia, all the up and coming, metal bands. But, now it's a little different.
How did you become aware of the other Slayer?
Well, actually, when we had our record out, we actually released first. We were the first one. We put out Prepare to Die. And then all of a sudden, Brian Slagle stepped in and said, we have a Slayer about to come out. Show No Mercy. They had the EP.
Yeah, the Hunting the Chapel.
Yeah, that came and we're going, wait a minute. You know, so it was kind of strange. We were like, well, what do we do? And, you know, a lot of people say that they gave us a cease and desist, but that never really happened. What ended up by them taking over the name is me and Dave were already involved with Mark Kadzielawa from Riot, because at that time when we did the Slayer versus Slayer, we were already playing with Mark with his solo band Narita, making music. So we were on our way out of the name anyway, but we knew of them. So when we did the Slayer versus Slayer show, when they came backstage in San Antonio, it was funny. Their kids, they were in like Dave Lombardo's Camaro with a U-Haul trailer. We helped them put their gear on stage. And then when we were backstage, we were all like bros. We were like, well, you know, our record labels are arguing, but we were like, hey, whatever. You know what I mean? They weren't being real, you gotta stop. You got, you know, it was kind of a.
So there was no conflict whatsoever.
There was no conflict. We had, you know, we had a good time. You know, Kerry King had an attitude like he always does, and he has one now. But you know, you can't forgive the guy for that. Anyway, Tom, he lives in Texas now. He's a great guy. I know his brother, and you know, God rest Jeff Hanneman's soul. Or if he's down with the devil, like they preach. But they were great guys, and it was a very fun, legendary show, and we'll never forget it.
Yeah. So in 1983, you want to show it? Prepare to Die comes out.
Yeah.
Right? You want to hold it up?
Prepare to Die.
Yes. What impact did this EP make, and how widely was it available back then?
It was, you know, it made a big impact because we were one of the first bands to actually get signed by a semi-known label. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of local talent on local labels and stuff. But we had this guy, Bob O'Neill, at Boss Studios. He saw the talent in there, and he knew the new wave of British heavy metal was coming up. So it'd be cool to, like, have a release like this from a band. So basically, you know, we went in there, and he wanted us to sound, you know, this certain way that Prepare to Die was. You know, they loved Steve Cooper's vocals. We were just a different band. And so they signed us, and they got a big distribution deal. So we were getting known, you know, in Europe already and stuff. We're just a young San Antonio band. We were getting reviews in, you know, Rock Hard and different, you know, magazines back then and stuff. So it was really cool. So we were very proud of this, and we thought as a bunch of youngins, this was just going to be an EP, but it turned out to be, you know, it's legendary, and it's a staple for underground metal, especially for Texas and stuff like that. And I think it was before its time. It's really cool. We even made this album cover back in the day before there were before there were computers, and you could get on your computer and find a skull, you know, or superimpose it, or you know, all that stuff. We actually found a door. That's a real door, and we had a guy paint that, the symbols, and that's a real thing. We got that, and we hung it on the door, and in back there is a garden hose, true story, and we shoved fake blood, and that's real blood coming out. We were like, do it, and then he took pictures and stuff, but they put lights on it, so it's kind of purple, but this is real. This is not something you find on the computer. We really made that. Just like Go For The Throat, we had a friend of ours, and he put on nails, and they took a picture of it. These are both real.
Back then, that's what it had to be.
I know. We didn't have a computer to make them up.
So when did the band actually break up?
Well, like I was saying, when we were in Slayer, we were, you know, doing great. And then there was kind of a hiatus for us for a while. And then, you know, Mark Kadzielawa moved. He was from New York. He came down to Texas. We had mutual friends. And basically, while Riot was, you know, off the road, and they were on hiatus after Born in America, Mark wanted a band to practice with. So our friend said, hey, Slayer practices in my garage. So Mark Kadzielawa from Riot would come practice with us in the garage. We were Riot fans too. We were like, damn, there's Mark Kadzielawa. So we would play songs with Mark, and we started getting to know him real good, and we'd go out, and then he became my roommate. So anyway, he would jam with us, and then he would jump on stage. We'd do Swords and Tequila with Slayer, you know, and he would come on stage. Yeah. So we do things, but that turned into a working relationship. He came with me, Dave, and Steve Cooper. He says, hey, I'm doing a new record, Born in America, and I wanted you guys to, you know, help me out with the songs. So I helped co-write 4 songs on Born in America, and then we, you know, we started working together, and he said, hey, I want to make a band. And one thing led to another, and then the guys in Slayer were on hiatus. So finally it came down basically to, you know, Mark calling me and saying, you know, Narita is on hold, but Riot's going back out. But Kip Lemming doesn't want to play bass. He didn't want to join Riot again, so he said, Don, do you want to be the bass player for Riot, one of my favorite bands? I said yes, and that pretty much put an end to Slayer.
Yeah, because there's like 5 years difference between Prepare to Die and Go For The Throat. How come?
Yeah, because after we did Prepare to Die, there was a hiatus because we were working with a company, and then after we stopped working with them, they actually recorded Go for the Throat, this company, but they didn't release the second one. They only released Prepare to Die, and they gave it to a couple other companies. You know, at this point, High Roller released it, Bart Gaber released it, the guy from Tom released it for I forget what Tom Mathers released it. Okay. So we had a few releases on it, but it was a hiatus, and finally people were like, let's release it. So it's like a 5-year gap or something. Yeah. And then that's what we did. And basically we didn't do a lot with this. I think we did a couple novelty shows, but not like Prepare to Die.
Also, somewhere along the line, Art left and Ron came in on guitar. Ron, very specifically, what do you think he brought to the band?
He brought what I told you, a little more musicianship to the band. We fed off him. There's songs on Go for the Throat, like he wrote the TLO-22 guitar solo, and then Ancient Swords got these crazy off-time beats because, you know, he's from Watchtower and his previous bands. Him and his brother Bobby are incredible musicians, so they're releasing all this crazy stuff. But you know, back in the day, it was almost how we got Steve Cooper. We had different people in the band, but Steve Cooper was known in San Antonio as the singer, and Ronnie Jarzambek was the Eddie Van Halen. So when we had some discrepancies with Art, and he quit the band, we said, you know, we got Steve Cooper, let's go for the, you know, Van Halen. So we asked Ronnie, you want to join Slayer? And he said yes. So we ended up having the best singer and the best guitar player, and he brought that technical ability a little bit, so we stepped up our game.
If you were to reflect on Go for the Throat, what comes to mind?
Well, I just think, you know, it was a more, Prepare to Die, we were kids, we put everything in their hands, and on Go for the Throat, we were a little more mature and we were a little more musical on it. If you notice on Prepare to Die, I wrote every song on there. It was straight up just power chord, power metal with a few things. And on Go for the Throat, it was more involved. Bob Catlin wrote a couple. Ronnie wrote a couple. You know, so we had a little bit of different styles on there, and then I had mine. So we matured a little bit, and everybody brought their style, and I would think it was something more that we had more to do with writing and stuff like that. Prepare to Die was just kind of, they took care of it.
As far as shows or tours, what was available to you back then?
Back then we did, you know, mainly our own stuff. We did touring around Texas and stuff. We did shows, like I said, with you know, with like Watchtower and Hellstar, all that click and stuff like that. It was kind of that kind of vibe. We would play out every now and then, but we never really went on a big tour with anybody. You know, at that time, it was still kind of like, you know, the other Slayer, us, how do we get out? But we did have some legendary shows, but they were always in Texas, so, you know, this will be the first time, you know, Slayer's got to go to a friggin' Germany, you know, right, and play Keep It True and stuff like that. I mean, they had some bands doing the South Texas metal, playing my songs, but it wasn't the real band. This time it's the real band get. Yeah.
Obviously, as you mentioned before, one San Antonio Slayer band member, vocalist Steve Cooper, passed away in 2006. How would you describe him?
Oh, he's an excellent man. You know, on stage and off stage, he was a gentle soul with a, you know, a voice, you know, that was incredible. At the time, he was known as the singer in San Antonio. He wasn't stuck up. He was a very nice guy. He was a gentle soul, and everybody knew that, you know. And just he had great ideas. He wrote all the lyrics and all the vocal lines on this stuff. In Riot, I do a lot of the lyrics and, you know, tell Todd, you know, how to sing sometimes. He did it all, and he had such a style. And his lyrics and stuff like that, they were a lot of fun. But he was a great guy, and it's a shame that, you know, they took him too quick. He had a diabetes problem and stuff. But, you know, he lived with us for a while, and he never had attitude. He was a quiet, you know, gentle soul, and, you know, God rest his soul. But he's looking down upon us, you know, and he's prepared to die. You know, so.
Do you feel your music was appreciated and understood back then?
Yeah, I believe it was. You know, like I said, back then bands were starting to emerge. The metal scene was starting to happen. You know, you had the big ones like Priest, and Maiden, you know, and stuff. But the underground, you know, you had the smaller bands, the Testament, Exodus, Anthrax. We all started coming up, and we were a little bit below, you know, in the Texas scene and stuff. But it was starting to happen, and I think there was like, you know, I think the big three out of Texas probably would have had to been Slayer, Watchtower, and Hellstar, because you had Houston, Austin, and San Antonio, and then you had like Mike and Militia and them. They were up and comers too. There was a Wizard, Bustard, and them. You know, we had those kind of bands, but I think you know, it deserved to be more. You know, Hellstar got, you know, on a bigger label, and then Slayer happened to get on another label. So we were trying to climb up, you know, and it's just one of them things where you know, it didn't come together so much for us. Even Hellstar's playing. I'll see them sometimes, James and them on a festival, you know, and I'll say hi to them, and we go way back. But this will be the first time Slayer gets to get out.
Obviously, there's a lot of excitement connected to this reunion. Do you feel the audience has finally caught up to what you were trying to do and achieve?
Well, I think so. I mean, back then, obviously, when we were out and the records were out, we had a big time following in Texas. And we did, like I said, outside of Texas, we did have European magazines doing little articles on us. Because back then, you know, you still had magazines and, you know, stuff like that, you know. Now, so there's a lot of pods, and there's still, you know, some magazines. But back then, I think, you know, it was more with it. So it was that kind of vibe to where, you know, everybody was into that. And then as it, you know, spread out, it's our time to try to get out more now. But I think it was a cult following, like people knew. Like I said, you know, now, I mean, we were just in, was just in, we did a Latin America tour. I'm in Bogota, Colombia. You know, we're in Brazil, and they're bringing the records, and here comes Prepare to Die and Go for the Throat. You know, and I sign it, you know, and they have a Dave McClain, because when he played with Machine Head or something, you know, so we signed it, and they were all going, we hear you playing, we're gonna go, you know. So there's still a cult. We're not anything humongous like the other Slayer, but we're gonna have fun.
Perhaps that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
Personally, how does it feel to revisit that music?
It's cool. I haven't went down and got everything just yet, because I'm busy with Riot till the end of the year. But I did go over Prepare to Die. I wrote every song on Prepare to Die, so I kind of have it, you know, to memory, but I got to go back and dust off the cobwebs and stuff like that. But it was cool, you know, when I do stuff like that, it brings back a lot of memories. You know, I wrote like a kid. I can tell I wrote like a kid. Certain structures and songs, you know, and I'm like, that's great. I mean, I even brought some of this style to Riot, because, you know, Riot was rock and roll. When Mark hired me, we went a little more metal with Thundersteel. So that's because of me being in Slayer. You know, Mark went a little more metal. So when I play this, you know, it's really cool, and I did a few songs off of Go Through the Throat, and so it's really cool. But yeah, I got to go learn everything again.
Any aha moments?
Anyway.
Any aha moments?
Well, you know, I mean, always when Prepare to Die was always a legendary song. You know, you can even still see it on you know, on YouTube, like original versions, and I've even seen some guitar players do it and stuff like that. So when I'm playing it and stuff like that, I'm doing this riff, you know, where it's doing the, you know, you know, and I'm going, oh yeah. So, I remember it though.
I want to conclude on a personal note as well.
Okay.
What do you think you will get out of these shows?
Well, you know, like I said, this is kind of, we're doing it for fun. We all have our other professional bands, and who knows what the future will hold. Right now, it's going to be all our high school buddies coming together, you know, playing the songs from back in the day, having a good time, you know, being able to do, you know, Hell's Heroes, which is a great fest. We've played it. And then also when we do Germany for the first time, it's going to be great. We're all excited, and we're all brothers, so it's going to be cool. And we'll see what the future holds. There's been a few guys that have said, you want to make a record? You want to create a band again? So we'll see what the future holds.
Is there a chance of any new recordings?
Yeah, like I said, we re-recorded Upon Us the End, of Go for the Throat, and we re-recorded Prepare to Die, and Jason sang. So we have those, and we might release them on an EP or something.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Prepare to Die, Go for the Throat. All right.